And that's everything from me. So please feel free to contact me. I'll drop my email in the chat if you'd like any information. And thank you everyone for joining. And over to you, Howard. Thank you so much.
Debs, thank you very much. That was fantastic. So I would like to, just before I get on to presenting, there's been a change. I don't know if any of you have noticed that, but there's been a change or a slight modification in terms of the open book policy on the CDMP exams. So I was just wanting to ask Veronica to share and just make sure that you all understand it, because we've had a few people that they haven't received their certificate, and when asking for their certificate, there's been some questions around it. So we'd just like to make sure that you're all aware.
Okay. Yeah, we asked for clarification from supports, and we were given. Do you want me to just share my screen?
Okay, you can.
Okay, we were given this link to go and see. And if you're doing an exam, you have to agree to these exam conditions and guidelines. This seems to be, they've added this since I wrote my last exam. And have a look here. I'm taking my exam online or I'm taking my exam in person. So you click on that and then you agree to it. And the open book policy, it only allowed one book. And that one book could be your DM book, it could be your notes, it could be even your handwritten notes in a notebook.
Yeah.
And if that's for the physical books, if you want to use a PDF, you can't have any physical books. You can only have your PDF on your separate computer, which apparently should be not connected to the internet. So when people are showing their room scan, they maybe go a bit fast, but they also may not be understanding that that's what, if they see a physical book on your desk, you mustn't have a separate device. That's all you have. It's your computer you're taking the exam with and your book or your notes. You are allowed to have handwritten notes in your DM book. So if you're using the physical, then do your tagging the way we recommend. Tag all your chapters, tag all your important things to look up, like your metadata types, the GDPR table, the data quality dimensions table, all those things that you need to look up. Yeah, so that's the bad news.
Yeah. All right. So I know Paul is busy training at the moment. So Paul, that update was specifically for you. Make sure that your people are aware of it, because I think we've had 2 people in Saudi that have had problems getting their certificate.
Okay, I'll make sure I attend to that. No problem, Howard.
Cool. Thanks very much.
And yeah. Saudi, I'll just get another complete clarification, but they do allow hijabs for ladies. And I think before you do your exam, if you're going to wear a hijab or a niqab, I would send an email to support@cdmp.info and say, this is my name, I'm going to be taking the exam and I'm wearing a hijab. Just to be on the safe side. You're allowed to wear a niqab as well if you know you, and then I would inform them that this is what you're going to do.
All right, cool. Awesome. Thank you for that. I'll make sure I point this out on Sunday.
Okay, fantastic. Let's get going. So the first week we did the DQ manager. Those were the areas we looked at, the different frameworks. Lotion, we had English, we had CDQ, we had Duran, we had DMAC, we had the 5 Whys, the Plan, Do, Check, Act. And then we spoke a little bit about helping the data quality citizens in terms of them defining their expectations. What is it that they expect and what's their purpose? So fit for purpose comes from our data quality citizens. So please, as a data quality specialist, you have to spend time with your data quality citizens, getting their perspective of what you need to do and the level of quality that you need to achieve. Okay, then this is what we're going to be dealing with today, and then next week we'll actually be doing some use cases of business there's one from Canadian Information Institute for Health Information, and we're going to go through a use case from a business point of view and how to justify it at a business level. Okay. All right. So the thing I wanted to start with is, first of all, the data quality professional has to help define what we call the SIPOC, right? So this is the procedure for defining data quality rules and expressing them for the purpose that you're dealing with. Okay. So you're gonna be sitting with data governance. Not all data governance people are comfortable and are able to do that. So as a data quality professional, this is where you'd lead in defining the process. Okay. So the first process is, what criteria should we use to define and select the critical data element? Okay. Now, one of the things that we do know is that if you've chosen a master data system, but not every single master data element is a critical data element. So be careful of throwing everything into your master data domain, and then you can't achieve the levels of quality in master data. So I'd be wary of just trying to push everything, all the different attributes, the 2,500 customer attributes when we're doing a 360 into a master data system. Can you guarantee that you're able to achieve the right level of quality? And I always have this example, I'm sure Paul has seen it on my videos, where I talk to them about, if I was a retailer and I'm selling shoes, for example, would the shoe size of the customer be relevant on the master data system? So any comments on that? Would anyone like to maybe just explain to them why they would or why they wouldn't have shoe size in a master data system? What is the challenge with respect to quality? Drew, I know you've done this over and over again. Is this something that you would add to a master data system?
I might add it to a customer master data system, but otherwise I would have shoe size as reference data.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I sorry, maybe I expressed that wrong. Of course, there's a domain of shoe size, but would we have the customer shoe size in a master data system?
Probably not.
Okay, fantastic. And there's Paul asking the question about currency. So Drew, would you explain to the people why you wouldn't put shoe size in the customer master data?
Yeah, thinking about that. If you've got a customer record, the kind of stuff that you would keep would be, and whether that's even master data, but it is, what is the demographics of the customer, the name, the address, the age,
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. Shoe size is something probably that could change.
yeah,
And it's probably irrelevant, especially in other lines of business.
yeah. Now, it was interesting because I remember, Drew, I remember actually sitting in the pub in Edgar's Retail, and I was talking to one of the shoe salesmen, and he was battling at that stage with the fact that when they have these buyers, they buy shoes, and if they don't do well for that season, then they get into trouble, right? And this buyer was saying, well, now how do I determine, what the demand is, and how do I go about doing a survey of my customers and things like that? And of course, at that stage, I was a DBA and I didn't know much at that point in time. And I wasn't able to explain to him how to get over the situation and what's right and what's wrong. And only over the years have this problem stuck with me, talking to this guy and understanding his challenges and the pain that he was going through in terms of making this type of decision. What shoes should I buy? He was buying Italian shoes, and they had limited shoe size, and he wasn't sure whether he could sell them all. So there was this challenge. Now, as I've grown up with this master data and started to understand, one of the things that kill you is the change, the rate of change. And Paul asked a question there about currency. So, for example, if I bought my 9-year-old son some shoes, and then we didn't see him for 5 or 6 years, would we be able to depend on the value of shoe size? And that's where our problems come in terms of being able to maintain that level of accuracy about and currency on the shoes. So we get ourselves into trouble with those type of things, and we bring things into our master data system when they shouldn't be. And when this was actually with one of our customers, and we then noticed the volatility on this attribute, on the change, and we actually removed that attribute, and we used a forecasting algorithm to calculate what the shoe size should be, rather than trying to keep this shoe size up to date and current. Okay, so that's as Drew rightly said, you need to monitor the change of your attributes within a system. Now, of course, when you sort of my age, I don't think I've changed my pair of shoes, the size of my shoes, for 15, 20 years, so that's okay. So
longer than that.
yeah, maybe longer. Yeah.
I don't think you've
Okay.
changed your shoes.
I've still got my same fell squints, but yes, I have changed them every now and again. Yeah. Okay, so this critical data element is important. We have to understand what it's all about, and this is why I'm trying to show you how, as a professional, you need to define the SIPOC. And maybe just to go back, that's the procedure. SIPOC stands for who supplies us with what information, what are the inputs, what is the procedure that we do for calculating a data quality expectation, what's the output look like, and who consumes it. So as a professional, you need to understand these different areas. But first of all, you have to understand what a CDE is, because you don't want to do data quality rules on something that's not a CDE. Okay, so that's why I brought in this discussion of shoe size and master data and these different areas. So some of the elements, data is key to business decision making. So, for example, do you have, for the reports that they're delivering, do you have a decision inventory of what decisions are there and what makes up that decision process? Okay. All right. So this is sort of, I wouldn't attest to all of these areas. I think it's a lot more complicated, but you need, as a data quality, when you're doing your SIPOC, this is what you need. You need something like this to be able to take the people through a set of criteria on choosing a critical data element. Okay. Otherwise, they're going to bring in a whole lot of stuff and you don't need it. Okay. And in some cases, you don't actually want it. All right. Now, once you've got the CDEs, your next step is this area over here. This has to be important. You want to start off with your most important critical data element. Now, when I say that, I'd also like to adjust that statement in terms of qualifying that with what I like to do is do it by business use case. And those business use cases come from the data strategy. And if you're starting out, you may find that the most important set of CDEs are the ones that people are complaining about, and then you'd expect them to be at a high level. Okay, so they'd probably bubble up to the top when you start off, but after that, then you're going to be taking it one use case at a time. Now, what I'm trying to show you here is we have our business value in terms of making a decision and the impact on the decision, and we have organizational relevance. So what we're looking at there would be the business processes, the different areas from an operational point of view, what impact does it have? And you're trying to look at these different criteria and come up with the two percentages, organizational relevance and business value, and map it on there to be able to understand where you're operating. And this helps you, for example, if your business value is very low or your operational level is low, then you have to be able to say, we are not going to be doing those now. Remember that Moscow thing we spoke about? Must, ought, should, could, won't. Those are the different things that you need to apply to your critical data element. Okay. Now, this is what I use as an Excel spreadsheet to train people in my data quality course. I take them through a training process. Okay. So here we would start off with the data set. Okay, we would then understand for that data set, what data quality perspective am I interested in? So almost what is the use case that we're talking about? What is the critical data element, the data quality dimension, the underlying concept? I'm hoping you guys saw that on the previous recordings or engagements. Remember, you don't just do a dimension without a underlying concept, because for a dimension I could have multiple concepts and I need to understand how to measure each concept. As an example, completeness, I can have an attribute populated, I could have a row or a data set. So I could work with multiple values in that dimension. Okay, and then I would have a minimum and maximum. We would define the state of the rule, and I like to have a rule description. So when I work with that in Power BI, I can say, this rule, this attribute, for example, contract number is failing, and this is the error that we get. Okay, we've dropped below a certain level. Okay. All right. Now, this is the sort of two approaches that I like to do. One is when we have a use case, we would then say, okay, use case, typically you'd start off with your set of data elements. What are the important data elements of a use case, of a data element? And then we go by CDE, who consumes it, and then what data set. Okay. Now, if I'm data product driven, then I'm what data set's appropriate, who consumes it, and then what's the critical data element. So there's a slight change in the way in which I go about starting off. Okay, so an example would be if I'm looking at a data product that I'm trying to build, then I'd say, well, okay, where is my data set? What is the data product? Okay, and then on that data product, I may have multiple consumers. Okay, and then by consumer, I'm going to understand what are the critical data elements. Remember, it's the consumer that defines fit for purpose. It's their decision. Okay, what are the critical data elements for you, Mr. Consumer? And then what we're trying to do is almost list the 5 or 6 dimensions that are applicable to that critical data element. What's the dimension? What's the status of the measure? Are we still in definition mode? Are we trying to agree what it is? The minimum and the maximum, and then we have a rule status and a rule message. So that's the approach that you'll take there. And then we go slightly different when we go for a critical data element. We're going to start off with the critical data elements, understand who uses the critical data elements, then understand what data sets are they using it in that area, and then we go that way. So it's just playing around with that starting point. I'm hoping that makes sense. Are there any questions in terms of the process or the steps that you're going to take to define a critical data element or define what we refer to here as a data quality expectation? This is, you've got to build this set of data quality rules that you can then go and assess the data. Any questions? Any comments?
Would you look to see where a data attribute might be used across a number of business processes and try and focus in on those as part of your CDEs?
What I like to do when I come with a use case approach, okay, so basically what the business are telling me, we want to build this data product. And what we then do is to say, well, okay, where is the best system of record for that critical data element? Which one's basically the authoritative system of record. Where's the create, read, update? Who's creating that thing? And if they're across multiple data sets or multiple systems, then yes, we would have to then say we should be getting it from here, and we define that source.
Sure.
That
No,
answer your
thank
question,
you.
Drew?
Sorry, Howard,
Yeah, I'm
thank
happy
you
with
for
that.
sharing.
Okay. Yes, Raj?
No, thank you for sharing this. Means again, I believe having the minimum is key over here, minimum from business, because else it's a wild chase. You are doing everything on the data set and you don't know which one to flag
Yes, correct.
and which one to not. I'm right now I'm facing that challenge. I don't have minimum from
Yes.
business.
It
Thank
will
you
drive
for
you
sharing.
crazy. And the
Yeah,
worst thing about it is that you'll do a presentation on what's wrong with the data, and then someone's going to say, but we don't use it, we're not interested in it, so why are you looking at it? And that's embarrassing.
yeah. And this is a huge takeaway for me having that minimum. I'll incorporate this with
Yes.
once again. Thank you very much.
Okay. Now, why do I use minimum and maximum? Can anyone answer me on that one? So let me ask you this question. Shouldn't the maximum always be 100%? Any comments?
I would say it would differ. Again, we do have an annual sales planning, right? Means again, so annual means again, some companies have twice a year annual sales planning cycle. In that case, if we compare with as is value, and if we take that over a period of year, you means again, if we run comparison again multiple planning cycles, having the maximum as 100% could lead to confusion. That's my opinion.
Okay, so and then there's another question. We've got someone saying 100% is unattainable, but what I'm trying to do here, and that's almost, who remembers the SPC diagram, where you have a maximum level, and you almost have a bracketing of where do we currently operate, and anything above the maximum and below the minimum, those are what we call the exceptional cases, and we need to pay attention. Now, if you get 100%, that's fantastic. You know, for example, completeness attribute populated, you're trying to get to 100%. Now, it doesn't matter that you don't get to 100%. That would be more important than minimum. Okay, so you would be playing around with your minimum to say, I want my gender to be populated 60% of the time, depending on my analytics. I want it to be 60. And then after 5 months or 6 months, I'm going to raise it to 70 and then to 80. So we're going to grow as we're moving along. Now, what I found is that's okay. But when I use something like reasonableness, okay, and I'm looking to detect a growth, too much of a growth, like at 300%, then I want the maximum in there to kick over when I'm picking up outliers that are excessive at the high level. Okay, so we should say our reasonableness is between 15 and 20%. Okay, so most of them you can work with minimums, but in some cases your dimensions need to work on a maximum, and they need to restrict what that rating is. Does that make sense? Any questions? It would be lovely, for example, to have logical, consistent, attribute populated, values. That's correct. But there are times where we want reasonableness to say this line item on the balance sheet should not increase more than 15% from last year. Okay.
Quick question.
Yes.
How do you decide what is a reasonable minimum or maximum?
That's a great question. A lot of the times, Ben, what you'll do is look historical over the periods that you want to analyze. So depending on the data quality rule that you're working with, you would then say, okay, what is a reasonable growth on this figure? And then what's very interesting about the reasonableness dimension is it's one of those few dimensions that, and when you get an error, it doesn't mean that the data is wrong. What it actually means is that someone needs to go and pay attention and actually ask the people what's going on. And we had that within the central bank that I worked at. They were doing it on balance sheet line items. And for example, if they saw a profit line item go or an asset value of owner's equity go above a certain amount of increase, then they would never say, let's reject the file. What they would say is we'd call an analyst and say, please, can you go and investigate this line item? The growth seems to be too high or too low, depending on what the other situation is. Ben, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So let's go a little bit further. Okay, we've done that one. So please, data quality specialists, data quality professionals, this is the critical one. Okay, this has got to be the most important procedure for you, is to set your expectations. Make sure that the business people have been heard, and you can link them to your system. Now, the question that we have is, yes, that's great. We do it in Excel, but then what? Okay, how do I automate this? How do I keep it going? How do I monitor it on a daily basis? It's fine for an initial data quality assessment, but how do I keep it going? And how do I keep monitoring that and keep the levels right? Okay, so I'm going to try to show you the architecture that we have for our data quality framework. All right, now the first thing that is helpful for a data professional, and especially the data architect, I find that the data architect is so crucial to this thing. First of all, because they deal with the data in all of the different areas across the entire life cycle. So here we can see they are dealing with application challenges, inputs on application. Then we're doing the ETL, or the data engineers, moving it from there to either the master data system or a data lake. Okay, then we're building our data products, and you can see the data products being built over here. And then we are going to the reporting analytics. Okay, so I really like this diagram, and I like the way that the use cases have been shared, and we've got these SLA checks. And what we are doing now is we need to set our data quality expectations. If we're starting from the business, here they are here at a business use case level. They need to make a decision. And then we would do an analysis on the different areas, on delivery, engineering, accumulation, ingestion, and we would say, well, what is the level of data quality for the different data sets along this pipeline? Okay, and why is this so important? Because we want to get to that root cause analysis. What is the system, or what is the process that's causing us the biggest problem? Okay. Now, I need a data architect to have all of this put together, this diagram put together. Otherwise, I'm going to be spending hours and hours preparing this and looking for every single issue and building this lineage along the journey. But I think there's a more important purpose than just understanding that lineage, is that we are seeing that there's a typical set of root cause issues. Okay, so when we getting into the application level, a lot of the times we're looking at poor system or application design. Okay, so in this situation, we would then be saying, well, if we're picking up our errors over here, what's happening within the application? What is our entity relationship diagram looking like? Do we have enough protection in our data model to ensure that the application is not giving us the wrong data? And here we're looking at entry quality, okay, and of course uniqueness. So are we ensuring that we're not getting duplicate records when we create the data? Okay, then we can start bringing in, as we ingesting, we start looking at our validity, or is the data valid as we're moving it from the applications to the warehouse and to the final area where the business are going to make decisions, either human or automated machine learning. Okay, so we're picking up, and almost as we're seeing dimensions reporting errors, we're getting a good understanding of where those problems are coming from.
Sorry, let's start off.
Okay, all right. So what we're trying to do is to say, when we see a problem and we do our root cause analysis, okay, these are the areas where we can focus on. Okay, and it's helpful to have that understanding as your architect, as your professional, you're positioning it in the right place. Okay, so once again, we're saying these are our common root causes of poor data quality. So when we have the challenges coming around, and I like this one, for example, where we had consistency and timeliness. Okay, how long is it taking to get from the application, from the point of entry to the report? How long is that time taken? And this is commonly known as latency. Okay, so latency, we know, as an example, it will come into the lake. How long does it take to get to the warehouse? How long does it take to get to the data mart? And depending on your ETL, am I using change data capture? Am I using Lambda? Whatever it is, I would be able to determine where some of my challenges are, where I'm facing some of my challenges. Okay. All right. So helpful as a data professional, when you're picking up some areas on certain dimensions, you're already starting to think, where would the root cause be? Okay, and then go and look at that root cause. Yes, Drew.
Howard, very often, if at the time of speccing the system, the quality requirements are not clearly identified, it causes that flow of bad data all the way through.
Yes, correct. Now, I think so you'll certainly see here, Drew, is this sort of importance, quality, entry quality, uniqueness, validity. A lot of the times they're coming in the source system. Now, these ones in terms of consistency, and remember consistency, it's got those two concepts. The first issue of consistency is, are the different data sets at the different areas consistent? So is our master data in line with our system of record? Is our data mart in line with the master data, which is in line with the system of record? So you can see that consistency is talking about this movement of data along the chain, and so the dimensions pointing me to sort of where about the problem will be sitting. Does that make sense, Drew?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Timeliness, representation, confidence. So helpful there as we report the areas across our dimensions, that we've got an understanding of where these things can be going wrong. Okay. All right. So what we would be doing, this is again to help you, is we should have, remember the Ishikawa diagram. You should have already a template. I don't know how many of you have done a study into the Ishikawa diagram. There are areas, especially within factories and stuff like that, they have a well-defined set of areas that they should look at. For example, people, training, executives, and materials. Okay, we need the similar thing to do, and this is very helpful when you do data quality as well. Yes, there's a hand up there. Mohammed, yes, sir.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thanks, and yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Just I have a question. In the previous slide, I have seen like data quality dimension need to be considered at various stages. For data accuracy, where we can consider this dimension, at which level?
Okay. All right, so it's a good question. What this is really saying is our almost our problems with data are, we can see here poor system design, inadequate enterprise, poor database design. So this is more about looking for root causes than it is about ensuring that we've got the right set of dimensions. So Mohammed, what I wanted to show you here is that the issue and the root cause is telling you where about on the lineage this is. Now, for example, if you have accuracy, and accuracy has got those two concepts. The first accuracy is with the real world. How does it relate to a real world? And that would typically be in your application at an application level. Okay, so am I getting the most up-to-date data, either from an external data feed or the database? Am I getting the right data that's an accurate representation of the customer or whoever I'm dealing with? Okay, then the other concept is that does it match an agreed source? For example, an ISO country or whatever it is. Now that may be a mapping to reference data. So reference data may be getting involved when I bring it into my reference data. I may be mapping it. But a lot of the times it would be referring to your application or almost the collection of data that create and obtain. That's where you're getting an accuracy issue, Mohammed. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So yes, that situation of if I change my shoe size, that was a good example. Now, it may have nothing to do with the application because the application hasn't seen a transaction from the customer. The customer hasn't bought a shoe for 10 years. So that's more a limitation of the up-to-dateness of the transactions that you're receiving. It's not really a poor application, if that's making sense as well. Okay, so these are the different areas. It's helpful, please, really important for you to understand and almost sense when I'm getting these issues and I've got this type of poor quality, these are the areas that I'm looking for. What is going to be my root cause and what would my remediation be? Okay, I have to fix the application. Oh, sure. I'm sure I've got a bad database design. My fact tables are wrong. My grain is wrong. These are the things that we need to look at. Okay, so we then go to the next step is having a lineage. We want to bring all these root causes into a certain area, and again, you want to have these standard aspects on your root cause or Ishikawa diagrams. And can you see over here, when we're talking about accuracy, this is for you, Mohammed, we would basically say, what processes, okay, what are problems caused by business processes? Multiple definitions of data entities exist. So we could have multiple processes, multiple applications. Then we've got data entry problems by an application. We've then got data integration issues and not getting all our data together. Database in terms of unique keys, and then policies. So we haven't standardized the names and addresses. Our policies haven't been well defined for that data element or entity that we're dealing with. Okay. So what I'm trying to suggest to you is make sure that you use these standardized Ishikawa diagrams with process, application, database, policies, integration to help you with that review. Okay. And then you're going to go to the improvement plan when you understand all of the issues that you're facing for a specific use case. If it's usability, okay, then you're going to be looking at your applications. If it's accessibility, okay, right. If it's completeness, then these are the areas. If it's timeliness. So I'm going to maybe just pause again to be able to see from a architecture, from a professional point of view, are you getting an idea of how important it is to understand where these different areas are coming and where to position your efforts in terms of fixing? Fantastic, Sean. Okay, great. All right, so now let's go through this thing where we trying to put. Remember, we have to put data quality in every single one of these steps. Can you see here as we go along? These are the different steps. So we can see here when we're integrating between the different systems, we've got quality in there. And when we're integrating across the enterprise, we've got these different levels from the operational system of records into our master data, into our application. And then we have to deal with auditing and reconciliation, or what we call consistency, the consistency dimension. We have to reconcile analytics to master data to the system of record. These are the areas where our data quality is going to get involved. Okay. Now, when you're putting together an architecture for data quality as a service, when you want to define almost a tool selection criteria, you have to be able to focus on these different areas. So does our data quality provide a metadata repository for the actual data quality rules, for the results on the trend analysis? Okay. Execution services, and then here you can see from a business point of view, is it validating our data? Can it do an audit for us? Can it do some automated cleaning? Does it support the definition of data stewardship services so that the data steward can see and get to the root cause and then fix it? Remember the 3 areas in correction on DQ. I'm sure Paul remembers it. Paul, what were those 3 things? We have automated, right, where the application fixes the problem. What are the other 2 areas? Any
Manual correction.
Manual correction, and then
Manual
driven or manually directed correction.
finger driven.
Okay, so basically the 3 is machine program can detect and fix, machine detects, people fix, and then people detect and fix. So those are basically the 3 aspects that you've got to do. And that's where the data steward services come in. And then, of course, there's a whole lot of analytics around data quality that we need to do. And then we need these different data quality databases. One is the metadata, one of the results of the metadata of the profiling and the analysis or the assessment, and then one is the reporting or the data quality data mart. Okay. All right, so this is again where our probes need to go in. We need to be able to probe on the different databases. They may be JSON, they may be Oracle, they may be SQL, master data, whatever it is. These are the different areas that it needs to look at. And then we can have an analysis of the data. To an extent, we can do some level of profiling. We do a data quality assessment against the business rules. We understand the data. This knowledge extractor is about understanding the data models, understanding the data processes. And so we're building up knowledge about it. And then we've got monitoring and reporting. So these are the core components of our data quality tool architecture. Okay. And what I wanted to show you here, this is what I refer to as our knowledge repository. So which processes are dealing with which group of data on this database, the different flows and the different sources, what tables, what views, what attributes are we dealing with, which organizational units, okay, across business lines, across business organizations. And then what is the issue, the loss event, or when we lose data quality? Okay, what's the dimension? What's the metric across our different databases? But our initial repository are these areas over here. I understand all of the organizations involved. I understand the business processes. I understand the phase, the different data groups that we're dealing with. And we need to bring this area together. So this is basically what we know as our data dictionary. Remember our data dictionary? Then we have the data flow, which is our data lineage, external sources when we have data sharing. These are our applications and process driven. Okay. And it's helpful to do this and to have this all documented so that when we see the issue, we can associate the issue with a process on a different phase for the different dimensions, and we've now got a much better description of the data that we're dealing with. Okay. So in my first framework, we spoke of that state reconstruction. So whenever you face an issue, you now have to go and reconstruct the state. If you don't have the data models, if you don't have the application design, if you don't have the business processes, we need to rebuild this before we can do a proper analysis. Okay. Now, this is basically a star schema design for data quality. Okay, so you can see that this data group comes from here. Remember, data group relates to a database, a table, and an attribute, and the views, the relationship there with the flows and the external source. Okay, we then have metrics. What are the metrics? And then we have the measures that each time we measure this, we take a measurement, then we have to store the measurement, and we are storing it according to a data quality dimension that we have. And then we've got the process that it's associated with and the organizational unit. Okay, so those are, can you see the dimensions? Metrics, time, data quality dimension, the process, the organizational unit, and the data group that we're dealing with, or the generic relational structure. Okay. All right. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about was how do we build a team? And this is one of the important things that data architecture needs to deal with, is have what's called a way of work. Okay. And the way of work would be, for example, do we do data quality in waterfall or agile? I wonder if anyone could answer that for me. What would be the most appropriate development approach for fixing data quality? Any comments?
I'm guessing in this case it might work better with waterfall, since
Yeah.
you can set up something right at the start.
That's 100% correct, Ben. And this is something that I like to share with my people, is when I say, oh, what development methodology, everyone says, no, we're all agile. Now, the thing with agile is that you can change your requirements and you can change and change and change. And agile doesn't always work well when you are in a situation where you've got a whole lot of issues and you want to get to the next level of quality. You almost want the issues packed together and say, these are the issues for this iteration / this waterfall run. These are the elements that we need to deal with. Drew, I see your hands up.
Yeah, Howard, I agree with you. I think that if you're going to follow a data quality lifecycle, first iteration definitely should be waterfall, because you're establishing some boundaries, some metrics, and everything else. But thereafter, I think once you get into the monitoring and stuff, it can maybe go a little bit more agile.
You see what I like to do. Remember the plan, do, check, act. Remember that flow. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
what you're wanting to do is to, when you plan, okay, these are all my issues. What's the root cause? Okay. In that situation, you don't want any changes whilst you're busy fixing those root causes to achieve the next target level of data quality. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. That's why you got to force.
But I'm saying once you've gone through that first cycle, once you've delivered on what your initial goals and end game was, then you can go a little bit more agile based on the monitoring.
Okay. Yeah, I would actually almost get into a situation where I in a way I don't really want to go into agile. So let me take you through that. It's a nice discussion. Raj, I see you.
Yeah, again, the reason is, means again, we tried both. I won't say we tried both. The pressure was to go agile. And data quality, lot of foundational work. It can't be completed in a couple of weeks cycle. And I feel we were, again, it was set up for failure. So starting foundation, it has to be waterfall, in my opinion, if we need to succeed.
Okay, so what I'm trying to say here in terms of waterfall, if I've chosen plan, do, check, act, okay, what I want to be able to do is to say these are the set of issues, and I understand the root cause that are going to be addressed in this cycle. Okay, now when I'm going through from plan to then fixing it and then checking, I don't want to be having changes here. All right, I don't want to almost be going back to my, oh shucks, I found a new issue, let's bring a new issue in, let's change that issue in this cycle. Rather, you've agreed the next level of target that you want to get to, and get through the do and then checking to see whether you're reaching that standard before you go back into bringing on and trying to deal with other issues, other requirements. I wonder, Drew, does that make sense?
That does, Howard, yeah.
I mean, remember, Agile is about innovation, that we get into a situation where we can't exclude change. We don't, Agile wants to deal with change and allow business people to change, but when you're going through a cycle, an improvement cycle of assess and approve, you don't want too many changes. You want to say these are the set of issues I need to deal with. Remember, we have that Pareto principle. Get your 20% of your 20% of the issues that are causing an 80% problem and fix them to get to the next target level. Now, if you're playing around with adjusting it, then oh shucks, what is my next target level? Did I reach it? Were my changes successful? And I can pick up some challenges in that area. And this is what an architect needs to do from an SDLC point of view. They need to define the way of work. How do we operate when it comes to these improvement cycles? Assess, improve, and then assure. Assess, improve, control, check that you're doing everything correctly. I saw some other hands up, and I know I see Sean there also suggesting Agile. Sean, any comments from your side?
So yeah, no, I agree with you for an initial start waterfall, but and I was just thinking, for improvements later on, it could be done in a more agile fashion. Someone mentioned that earlier as well. Yeah, I just kind of thought that.
Okay, so it's quite an important point, and what I'm saying is you will still go you will do it in an iterative way to get to your next level, but you're going to do it in a waterfall flow. You're not going to, once you've done your planning and you're busy doing, what you don't want then is to bring in other issues, right? Because you've planned how you're going to fix it and to achieve your next target level. So if I want to take my product up from a 60% of quality to 70%, I'm going to battle if I bring in issues, because remember, we have those challenges where we have issues caused by fixing issues.
Yeah, for sure.
So if we don't have a proper assessment and understanding of what it's going to do, what the impact is going to be of fixing an issue, we can get derailed on this one pretty quickly. So I'd like to be quite forceful in saying, yes, I'm not going to deal with everything. So I'm not saying, we want to tackle every single issue. What we're just saying is, for this next sprint or this next iteration, this next run that we have, we're not going to allow change to happen from within this cycle.
Yeah, makes sense for sure.
Okay, fantastic. I find it quite an important, and sorry that I'm harping on it. I find it quite an important thing because people think, it's Agile everything. We have to be careful sometimes. It's data quality or quality and things like distributed ledger where you can't be Agile. You have to apply a more rigorous flow through it. Fantastic. Are there any comments, any questions? Veronica did ask what was the data modeling.
Oh, that notation.
Yes, what the actual notation is.
Yeah.
There's actually in the DM box, there's one there. I need to just look at it. I can't give you an answer right now. Coral, are you aware of the actual the notation for that? Let me just go back there. You're right. That is the association. That diamond represents the association, but that actual notation, the data modeling notation. No, not. Let me check that quickly. I'm just going to do a quick Google. Do you remember, Carl?
Yes, because I was muted. So what happened? There was a many-to-many, say, between process and data quality loss, and then you introduce the associative entity in the middle that changes the one many-to-many to two times one to many.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
basically,
What I'm actually asking is I understand what it's saying. My question is, what is the notation? What is the name of the notation? Like IE or remember you were arguing about your conceptual model.
Yeah. So I think this guy would be Maurice, which is a French notation. So Maurice has the associative entities. Obviously, the icon that goes with the associative entity can be anything in this.
Veronica was right. It is the Chen notation.
Chen is a bit different. Chen uses the diamond to link attributes. So here we've got a link between entities. So Chen doesn't stack the attributes inside like the box of the entity. It flares them out. It uses a diamond and then flares out the attributes.
That's interesting because when I look at the website, this is the website that it's saying over here. Sorry, I got the wrong screen. There it is there. So entity 1 contains entity 2.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I think all the same. So I think once the association gets its own attributes, that's when it becomes only associative entity. So if it's just a relationship, that's fine.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, sir. No problem. All right. So these are just the association or that association entity. So when you have that many to many, you're going to break it up with an associated entity. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Hopefully, was that helpful for you, the data quality people, the professionals?
Yep, very cool. Very informative.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Thanks,
cool.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. And for the Saudi people, have a wonderful weekend, especially you, Paul. Coral, is it your weekend as well?
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Mashallah, as they say. You made it.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Howard.
Everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.